Hello everyone. Today we will try to understand about what are life cycle hooks. Okay, life cycle hooks. Okay, so before understanding this life cycle hooks, I just want to give a general meaning of some concepts. Like, what is the meaning of time period? Time period. So basically, time period is nothing but it's a time between certain points, right? It's a time between certain points. Certain points. If I say, like, what is the time period of a human being? What is the time period of a human being means the time between birth and death. So whatever the time you have between birth and death, that is called time period. Okay, in the same way, if I say what is the life cycle of human being. So life cycle of human being is nothing but the time between is birth and death. Same life cycle is nothing but time period only. So we can say time period as a life cycle of a human being, nothing but the time between birth and death. So during this time period or during this life cycle, human being goes through different phases, right? Human being passes through different phases. What are the different phases? So for example, you have the phases, like you have a childhood phase, right? Childhood phase. Then you have adult phase. Then you have something like young age phase. Then you have something like middle age phase. In the same way, you have something like old age phase. Like this, different people categorize in different phases, right? So basically the point is, every human being in his life cycle, he will passes through all these phases, right? In the same way, every component also has some life cycle. Every component has some life cycle. Now, what is the life cycle of a component? The life cycle of a human is from the time between birth to death. In the same way, the life cycle of a component is nothing but from it loads in the DOM till it is removed from the DOM. So the time between it loads in the DOM till it is removed from the DOM. Till it is removed from the DOM. So the time between this is called the life cycle of a component. And whenever life component goes through life cycle, so at different phases, different methods are called. Means during the life cycle of your components, there are some predefined methods which will be called at certain phases, and they are called in certain orders, right? So what are the different methods available which are called in between the component life cycle? We need to understand. Basically, there are totally 8 methods. What are that 8 methods means? Let me list out. The first one is called ng on change. This is the first life cycle method which is called. Okay, we will see when it is called. Just I'm trying to list out all the methods available in the life cycle. This is the first method. Then we have something called ng on init. This is the second life cycle method. We have something ng do check. This is a third life cycle method. Fourth life cycle method is ng after content in it. After ng after content in it. The same way, we have one more ng after content checked. In the same way, we have one more ng after view in it. In the same way, we have one more ng after view checked. Okay, these are the life cycle methods, and last one is ng on destroy. So these are the life cycle methods which are called during the life cycle of any components, during the life cycle of any components. So Angular is going to call all these methods. All these are methods. Okay, all these are methods. Now, during the life cycle of components, whenever you want to execute certain code between the life cycle of that component, then that code you can write inside this method. Okay, and you should just need to know when these methods are triggered. So once you know when these methods are triggered and in which order these methods are triggered, then easily you can write your code inside these methods based on your requirement. Okay, so basically in whatever order I have written as of now in the paint, in the same order these methods are called. Means if you configure all these methods, first ng on change method will be called, and this method will be called whenever your component is instantiated. Okay, instantiated. Whenever your component is instantiated, this particular method is called. In the same way, whenever your component is instantiated and loaded in the DOM, that time this method is called init. Apart from this, ng on changes will be called once if there is any change in the input property. So we have learned, right, input decorator. So if you remember, we have learned something called input decorator. So whenever there is a change in the property of this input decorator, suppose there is a property called child data, and I have just designed this property with input decorator. So whenever there is some change in this property, then this on change method will be called. And ng on it is called only one time when your component is loaded in your DOM, ng do check. This is another lifecycle method. This is called whenever there is some change in the component. Okay, whenever there is even a slight change in the component, your ng do check is going to be called. And ng on changes will be called first time, plus it will be called whenever there is a change in the your input decorator property. Okay, ng after content init. So this particular method is called first time whenever you are going to load any data in ng content selector, in ng content selector. Now what is this ng content selector? I will let you know. Okay, so remember, whenever any content is loaded inside this ng connector, whenever the content is loaded here, that time first time whenever a content is loaded inside this ng content, that time this ng after content init is called. And whenever there is some change inside this ng content, so once first you loaded, then after some time you changed some data here, then ng content checked is called. So whenever you have done some changes in the content of ng content, then your ng after content checked is called. In the same way, ng after view init. Now this is called whenever your component is completely loaded in the DOM, completely loaded in the DOM. Whenever your component is completely loaded in the DOM, ng after view init is called. Whenever your view also loaded and whenever your component is completely loaded, then this method is called. ng after view check is called whenever components, child components are also loaded. Whenever your components, all the child components are also completely loaded, then ng after view checked is called. Okay, in the same way, ng on destroy is called whenever you are going to remove your component from the DOM. So before removing your component from the DOM, ng on destroy is called. So before removing your component, if you want to perform certain operations, then that operations you can write in ng on destroy. So when it comes to real time, so you will get very rare chances to work on this life cycle method, but there are some life cycle method where you will be frequently working. The first one is ng on it, frequently will be working, ng on destroy, frequently will be working, ng on changes, very not frequently, but sometimes you get requirement, ng do check. Okay, here also you might get. Apart from that, all these methods have very rare requirement where you get opportunity to work on this. But the main two methods are ng on it and ng on destroy. These are two main methods which will be frequently used in your projects. Okay, so ng on it is called whenever your component is loaded in the DOM. ng on destroy is called before removing your component from the DOM. Okay, so let's see whether they are triggered in this order or not. Let's understand step by step. So to understand each and every life cycle method, what I did, I created a small example. What I did means simply I created one card. In that I have created one text box and one button. And inside this component, I have kept another component. I have just kept another child component. Now my requirement is very simple. User will type something in this text box. User will type something here and he will click on this button. Whenever he click on this button, this content we have to display here. Okay, this content we have to display here. Okay, in the same way, here I'm going to write ng content selector, and here I'm going to display the ng content selector. So just not to waste the time, already I have created that code because we already know how to create all this code. So if I go to my browser, this is what I have done. Okay, simply I have taken one card. This is a card header, card body, card footer. In card header, I have just given some title. In card body, I have taken one text box and one button. Already you guys know how to create this kind of UI. Just not to waste the time, that's why I already created this UI. And here parent. Now my requirement is, now whenever user will type something here, click on this send button. This data we have to take from here and we have to display here. Okay, so let's do first that one. So first let's try to take the data from here and let's try to display here. So for that, let's go to that parent component in src. Let me go to this app. Inside that components folder, inside that parents, let me go to the HTML. Now this is my input. So here already I have created one reference and here I have one button. So I just need one property which can hold the data. So here I'm just creating one property called parent data. Now which will be a string type, and initially the data will be empty. Okay. Now whenever user clicks on this button, nothing but I need to write here click event. Just I'm saying get data. I just need to call one function, and in that I am passing this reference input. Okay, now save it. Now come back here. Now define one method here, something called get data. Okay, now it will take one event which will be any type. Now whatever data I got, this dot parent data equals to, I will just assign that data using this reference e dot value. That's it. Okay, now what I am able to do, I'm able to take the data. Now this data I want to display in the child component. So if any in the child component, if any data is coming from the parent, then we should have here one property called child data. Okay, which will be string type, and initially it will be empty. Now this should hold the data which is coming from parent. So we have to simply import input decorator. So I'm just decorating it with the input decorator. Now this child data I can keep inside the here somewhere. Here I can just write one interpolation operator, and here I can say child data. Now save it. Now if you want to connect this both, we have to go to the parent component HTML, and in the selector here we have to write the child data and here parent data. Now let's see whether we are able to do or not. Now let me come back here. I'm typing something here, something called 90, and click on send. Here I'm able to get the data. Now what is that ng content in it, right? Now if you see, this is a selector, right, which is our tag format. This is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. Till now we have not written anything inside this. Now see, I'm writing some content. So this is new content. Okay, now this content, if you want to display this content, if you want to display inside your child component, then we have to display in a special container. That special container is ng content. So inside ng content only you can display the data which is inside between your opening and closing selectors. Okay, now here simply I will I'm writing ng content, and before that I'm writing here ng content. That's it. Okay, now done. Okay, now whatever content you are writing here in between this opening tag and closing tag, this content, now this content will be displayed inside this ng content. Inside this ng content, don't write here anything. Now if you go here, now see here we got ng content. This is new content. Okay, now suppose if I'm not writing this ng content here, now let me remove this ng content from here and save it. Now see, you are not able to see that content. So that content, if you want to display, then you have to write this ng content only. Okay, Done. So we have just done some of this setup. Now let's see whether that methods are triggered in that order or not. Okay. So for that, I will go to this child component TS. Now here already we have ng on it, right? So let me remove this ng on changes. Okay. Now here already we have ng on it, right? So let me save it. Now here let me write a console.log. And here I'm saying something like ng on in it is called. In the same way, what is the first life cycle method? That is ng on changes, right? So it is inside one interface called on changes. Okay. So now here we have to define that method ng on changes. Here we have to define that method. Now see here I have defined that method. Okay. So meanwhile, I think extra we got something here. Yeah. Okay. Let me remove this. Now let's come back here. Now here I'm writing console.log, and here I can write something like ng on changes is called. So let's see whether it will call first init or ng on changes. Okay, anyways, first constructor will be called because you have to create the instance. So once constructor is called, then ng on changes is called, then your ng on it is called. So whether it is called in this order or not, let's check. So let's come back here. Let's refresh it. Let's inspect and let's see the console. If you see here, first ng on changes is called, then ng on it is called. Okay, so it doesn't mean that we are writing this first, so it is called first. Okay, I'm writing this here also. Okay, I'm writing first ng on it, then ng on changes. Now let me remove all this. Now I'm refreshing it. Now see, first ng on changes is called, and then ng on it is called. Okay, now here I'm typing something and clicking on that send button. Whenever I click on send button, there is some change in that input decorator. Whenever there is change in input decorator, again your ng on change is called. One more time it is called. Now see, ng on it is not called. It is called only one time, but ng on changes is called two times. First time whenever your component is loaded. Second time whenever there is change in your input decorator. Okay. In the same ways, now third life cycle method is your do check. ng do check. Okay, so let me write here do check. Okay, now here I'm defining that do check ng do check. Now here I can write console.log. Now here ng do check is called. So ng do check is called whenever there is some change inside your component. Okay, now if you come here, now see, first ng on changes is called, ng on it is called, ng do check is called. Now this is called because your child component is loading empty data here. That's why. Okay. Now remove here. Now I am typing something here. Okay. Now whenever I type something and click on send, now see ng on changes is called because input decorator got updated. ng do check is called because your component got updated. So ng do check will be called whenever your component gets updated. Okay, at whatever reason it might be, if your component is getting updated, ng do check is called, but ng on changes will be called only if input decorator is updated. Only input decorator is updated. Okay, now these are the three life cycle methods. In the same way, we have one more ng. So let me first implement the interface. So we have the interface called after content init. Okay, after content init. Now here I can say ng after content init. Now console.log. Now here see I'm writing ng after content init is called. Okay, now whenever it is called, it is called at the first time whenever a component is loaded, right? Now see ng on changes called, ng init called, check called, then content init is called. Okay, this is the order they are calling. In the same way, we have one more called ng after content checked. Here ng or before that we can say after content checked. So here I can just implement that method one more time. I'm just implementing that method here. ng after content is called console.log. Now here ng content is called. That's it. Now save it. Okay. ng content, or I can say that after checked. Let me write completely. Checked is called. Now let's see if in which order it will be triggered. Now if you come here, now see, this is called, this is called, this is called, content init is called, then content checked is called. But content checked, it will call one more time if there is any updates in this ng content. Okay, just to get update, what I will do, I will go to that child HTML, and here what we can do means I want to write, let me write here selector, and here let me write child data. Okay, child data is not working. Okay, here we should not write anything, right? So I will do one thing. Okay, I will go to that parent HTML part. Now here this content should get updated, right? So here I will just pass. Okay, I will just pass that parent data. Your parent data is always changing, right? So whenever parent data changes, your ng content will also change, right? Now see here I'm typing my name Kabir. I'll click on send. Here I got Kabir. Here also I got Kabir. Now if you see here, ng content check is called one more time because you have done some changes. Again, I'm writing here 1, 2, 3 and clicking on send. Now see here, your content got checked. Whenever your content got updated, here ng after content checked is called. So when ng after content checked is called, whenever your content is updated inside ng content. Whenever a content is updated inside your ng content. Okay, so that time this is called. So this is how. So let me remove this again. If I write here 4, 5, 6, 7 and click on end, now see only 3 methods are called. ng on changes is called because input got updated. ng do check is called because whenever component gets updated, it is by default called. And ng after content checked is called because you have updated some content here in the ng content. This is how it is called. And the next one, lifecycle methods is, so let me go here near ts. Now here let me implement the two lifecycle two interfaces here. Okay, let me implement both the interfaces at a time. So after view checked and after view init. Okay, I'm just implementing both the things at a time. So ng after view init, and before that I will write ng after content view checked. Now here same console.log. Now here ng after content view init is called. Here also I will write the same thing. I will just copy this one and I will paste here. Okay, actually here we have to say checked. Okay, checked. Let's see in which order it is called. First init is called, then checked is called. Now if you come here, now first time say ng content checked. Okay, let me remove all this now. Now let me refresh it. Now first ng on changes is called, then ng init is called, then check is called, then content init is called, content checked is called. Now see here, view init is called first, then view checked is called. Okay, once your component is completely initialized, then it is called, and it is called whenever your child component got initialized completely. Okay, so these methods, we don't have any example to show this. So just remember, view init is called whenever your parent component is completely initialized. And this is called whenever your parent plus its child component are also completely initialized, then this is called checked. Okay, in the same way, last one we have ng destroy. ng destroy. So let me first implement the interface. So the interface will be on destroy. So on destroy is called whenever you are want to remove the component. So here ng on destroy. So console.log, and here I want to write ng destroy is called. Now save it. Now come here. Now see, if you see here, ng destroy is not called because we are not removing any component. Now what I will do, near this parent ts, I will take one boolean value, remove component boolean type. Initially the value will be false. Once don't remove it. So let me go to the selector, and let me add here one ng if director, ng if directive. So here I will say simply remove comp. Okay, ng if I'm saying here remove comp. Now remove comp is false. Whenever it is false, so it will not be removed. So if you come here, okay, it is removed because ng comp. Let me see what I have written in ng comp. Let me say true. Whenever it's a true, we have to show it, right? Now see here content is showing. Now whenever I just want to show one more button here. So in HTML part, we will write one more button, something like remove comp. Okay, here whenever it's called remove comp, method will be called remove comp. And here let me remove this, and let me write this method inside my TS. Okay, whenever it is called remove comp is called remove comp. Let's do one here because there are same properties. So here also I will write one. So I have written here one, and here I have written here also one. Now simply what you have to do, console.log. Here I will say on destroy squad. No, here nothing. Here we have to just change the value, right? This dot remove comp equals to, we have to say false. Nothing but we have to remove the component. Now go here, now save it. Now go to parent TS and let's go to HTML TS, and here done, everything is done. Now see, whenever the component is loaded, that time you see here you are getting this one, right? Okay, let me do one thing for this button. Let me give some empty -2 margin -2 so that you will get some spaces. So I got some space. Okay, now if you see here ng on destroy is not called. Now this is the component we are displaying, right? Now if I click on this, now that component is removed, and see ng destroy is called. ng destroy is called. So whenever your component is removed from the DOM, ng destroy is called. ng destroy is called. Now these are the lifecycle hooks which are triggered in this particular sequence. These are triggered in this particular sequence. Now you know when they are triggered, and whenever you get a requirement where you have to execute certain set of a code in this particular methods during this phase, then you can simply go to this method and you can write your logic there, and Angular will call these methods based on whenever that phases encounters. Okay, so this is how this lifecycle methods are going to work. Just focus more on this lifecycle hook and on destroy. Okay, this ng on it and ng destroy, these are frequently used in your projects. Yeah, so that's all guys. This is all about your lifecycle hooks. Okay, if you have any kind of doubts, you guys can ask it.